terms of, throughout history,
yeah.
I mean, I think could I have been there with Jesus's disciples? I mean, these are people who, Peter's just fishing one day and all of a sudden this guy comes up to him, catches all the fish and says, you're going to be fisher. I want you to be a fisher of men. Come with me. And so these guys all went out and they dedicated their life to spreading the gospel. And they all were killed for, they tried to kill John. John ended up, being able to survive. But I mean, the intent was to put him to death too.
Well, we've reached my least favorite part of every presidential election cycle. The moment when a bunch of Republicans who probably haven't cracked open their Bibles in 4 years start comparing themselves to the apostles of Jesus Christ.
I think could I have been there with Jesus' disciples?
Yes, Christian testimonial time has come earlier this year than in most other presidential races, because unlike in other years, the GOP's evangelical Christian base is divided, and Meatball Ron DeSantis isn't the only presidential hopeful getting in on the action.
We need one national purpose. We need to go back to faith, family, country. That's what's always served us well, and we've got to bring that back together.
She says the left's obsession with trying to break down traditional gender roles in all aspects of society are having the opposite effect.
We are doing such a disservice to this generation. We have got to stop this. We've got to snap out of it.
It's no coincidence that you're suddenly hearing a lot of Republicans talking about how our country needs to have one shared purpose again. And that almost always starts with a shared Christian faith. But how far are Republicans willing to go to actually bring about that one shared faith? If Ron DeSantis is any indication, pretty far. Because DeSantis believes our modern nation has become hopelessly corrupt and separated from its holy purpose. And there's only one way to fix that. Here's Ron.
That this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. How do you see that in terms of infusing that into public policy?
Of course it was. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. This society, the United States of America, was built on the foundation, of what happened thousands of years ago in the Holy Land. And I think the Judeo-Christian values undergird everything that the founding fathers did. Some of it, was just so embedded, they didn't even need to think about it. Of course, those are the values.
Yep, Ron wants to rebuild America based on the Judeo-Christian religious nation that the founding fathers wanted. Except that doesn't actually make any sense. Were the founding fathers religious? Sure, some of them, and that's about as useful as that argument gets. Among our founders were Anglicans, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Quakers, Catholics, and men who struggled deeply with whether they believed at all. And while he was only speaking for himself, the revolutionary Thomas Paine drew praise from some founders for his profession of faith. He said, "I believe in one God and no more, and I hope for happiness beyond this life. I believe in the equality of man. I believe the religious duties consist of doing justice, loving mercy, and in endeavoring to make our fellow creatures happy." That isn't what Republicans are selling. Instead, far-right pastors are marketing a hollowed-out and weaponized form of Christianity. And just as religiously complicated guy Thomas Jefferson warned, the most extreme religious fundamentalists want to enshrine their faith through the power of government.
This nation, particularly to Christian people, should be completely, totally based on what George Washington said to Jesus. The first act of Congress, number one, the first act of Congress was to enter covenant with the Almighty God based on the book of Genesis.
You probably know MAGA pastor Kenneth Copeland. Well, he's just as bad at history as he is at theology. But since Kent brought it up, let's detour for a real quick chat about what the founders really felt needed to guide our country. First act of Congress, signed into law June 1st, 1789. A bill the founders hoped would be as much a statement of principle as a piece of law. It sets out the oath all public servants swear. "I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States." That, my friends, is the message our founding fathers hoped would reach us through the passage of centuries. The simple fact that above all else, at our most fundamental level, our democracy is nothing if our leaders don't dedicate themselves to defending and supporting the Constitution. Time and again, we've seen Republicans cast aside that oath in the name of God or Donald Trump or whatever political expediency ruled the moment. They failed the first test our founders set out. With all due respect, they can spare us the theology theology lecture. When Republicans complain that this country just isn't what it used to be, remind them that they're a big reason why that's the case. By abandoning the Constitution in favor of religious pandering, the GOP has shown its loyalty isn't to the Republic, it's to themselves. If you enjoyed that, check out this video about how the GOP's Biden bribery scandal is finally falling apart.
It's extraordinary.
And leave a comment below so you can let me know what I should cover next.